Hey everybody, what's going on? Thank y'all for checking out my channel. I really appreciate it. If you're new here, thank you for checking this out. And if you've been around for a while, thanks for coming back again. This video, I'm gonna be going over my underspin setup. It's getting that time of the year where you gotta start throwing that underspin. You can really get some bites and those fish are finicky. But before we get started doing that, if you haven't already, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. It helps my channel grow, helps me get my videos out to new people, and it's just all around good. And if you subscribe and end up not liking me, you can always just unsubscribe. I mean, it takes 2 seconds to do. So thank y'all for doing that. But like I said, to get into it, today's video, I'm going over an underspin. And the underspin is a bait that's been out for a while now. You know, this, if you've been around bass fishing, you know, this right here is what it looks like. Just, you know, you've got your swim bait head, an exposed hook, and then a little willow leaf blade attached to the bottom. And it's called an underspin because it spins under the head of it. Your blade is, you know, it spins under the head. And this is a bait that's been around for a long time. But when it really got popular was about, I want to say maybe 7 or 8 years ago. Casey Ashley won the Bassmaster Classic up at Lake Hartwell. It was early spring, and you know, the Bassmaster Classic can either be a pre-spawn tournament, a spawn, you know, it's always right there. And this was a really early pre-spawn tournament, and Casey Ashley ended up winning on mainly spotted bass. And I think, you know, I'll take that back. I think he had a mixture. He had, you know, some big spotted bass and big largemouth out there in the ditches on Lake Hartwell, and he was throwing an underspin. I don't remember the exact one he was throwing. I think he was using a Zoom trailer. I know he's sponsored by Zoom, but you know, just you know, he was throwing the underspin, and that's when it really got, you know, nationwide coverage. It's like all these baits, somebody knows about everything. There's not a secret bait. And it takes a big tournament win for it to get exposed to everybody. But I promise, Casey Ashley has been throwing an underspin for a long time. It just, when he won the Classic on it, that's when everybody found out. But to get into the setup and how I like to throw it and all that stuff, number one, I'll go ahead and do the rod and reel and all that. So I just throw mine on a 7'1" medium heavy rod. I don't fish it the way that he was. I don't fish this thing, you know, in 50, 60 foot of water, hugging the bottom on a big ditch or a big ledge, you know. I'm fishing it in a unorthodox way compared to how, you know, most people may fish this bait. But I'm just throwing that on a 7'1" medium heavy rod. I have it on a 7-to-2-to-1 gear ratio reel, you know, just your average reel. You can burn it pretty quick if you want, or you can just barely turn it and creep that thing. And I've actually got 12-pound fluorocarbon. You know, most of the time when you're fishing an underspin, you're gonna be fishing a clear water reservoir or river, and you know, you don't want really big line because one, the fish may see it if they're finicky, and two, the smaller line helps your bait get down deeper in the water, which is, you know, what you want. So to get into the bait itself, this is actually a 1/2 ounce because I'm actually at Lake Lanier right now. I'm taking a little break to film this video, but I'm at Lake Lanier, so you know, a little bit deeper, and the wind was really blowing this morning, so I tied on that 1/2 ounce so I could, you know, kind of control my cast. But mainly I'm throwing a 3/8 in this. That's mainly what I use, is a 3/8 size. Not really a 1/2 ounce. I use a 3/8 and a 3/16 mainly. I don't really go any smaller, and I don't go any bigger. If you're fishing, you know, 40, 50 foot, yeah, you could go up to a 1 ounce head if you wanted. But for the way that I fish, a 1/2 ounce is as big as I go, but it's normally a 3/8. And this is just like a little 4-inch paddle tail swim bait. It doesn't really matter on the particular brand. You don't have to get stuck on one thing or another. You can just put your favorite 3 to 5-inch swim bait on the back. I think a 4-inch is the perfect size. You know, you can catch a keeper on it or a 7-pounder. You know, it's a really good bait fish profile, that 4-inch, and I really like the slender one. If you can see that on the camera, that's just a really slender bait. I mean, it's like the same width as the head of this. You know, it's just a really skinny bait, and it puts off a lot of action. It's like a really tight action, and the tail's just back and forth. So I really like that, you know, when the fish are finicky, or, you know, you're trying to finesse them. But the way that I fish this is, you know, a little bit different than the traditional way that, you know, people found out about this. So like I was saying, you know, Casey Ashley wins the Classic, and he's throwing this thing in the ditches on Lake Hartwell. And a ditch is basically, if you get in the middle of a big pocket or a big creek, the water that runs in, you know, from your feeder creek or your spring in the back, if you get in the very middle of that pocket, about 3/4 of the way back, you have like the canal, like the stream, and it may not be but 2-3 foot wide, and it might only be like a foot lower than the rest of the bottom of the lake. But those fish, especially in the wintertime, those big spotted bass and largemouth will get down there in them ditches, and you can pretty much parallel it. Just picture throwing your bait right down the yellow line on the road. You know, just you line up and you fish the bait and you bring it through the ditch, and then fish just sit down there on the bottom. You actually can bring this thing through the mud and catch them. I don't have much experience doing that. The way that I fish it is when I see fish chasing shad or running shad this time of the year, and I think they're out of reach for a fluke, I throw this thing at them. I mean, a fish that's running a shad cannot resist that right there. I've caught some fish this year, you know, the past couple weeks, past month or so, down at Lake Wedowee, you know, fish coming up, running shad, you know, no specific rhyme or reason. You know, if a fish comes up and bust, it may start running some shad. If you can see a ball of shad, you can toss this thing over there. It doesn't make any noise. You just toss it over there. You reel it really slow through the shad or through the bait you can see, and these fish will come up and smoke this thing. It's a really good bait, and I think it's a really overlooked bait, because, you know, most people, they want to fish a spinner bait or a big swim bait or a top water or, you know, a jerk bait, but this right here can really get you some extra bites, especially if the fish have gotten a lot of pressure. This is a really good bait. And too, I mean, it does catch really big fish. I mean, granted, you're gonna catch more smaller fish on this, I think, but it will definitely get you some bites, and this is one of the best times to be throwing it. But, you know, like I was saying, just this is actually a 1/2 ounce head, like I said, but anywhere between 3/16, 3/8 to 1/2 ounce on average. A 3 or 4, 5 inch white swim bait. You just want to keep it a shad color, as natural as possible, and you want to make sure you rig your swim bait on there straight. The straighter your swim bait is, the truer action it has. If you rig your swim bait sideways, it's going to come through the water like this. But if you rig it straight, it'll run through the water straight up. You want it to be as straight and as streamlined as possible. So I'm throwing on 12-pound fluorocarbon. That way you can get your bait down there in the water column, and it's not that big diameter line, so the fish don't see it. And then just a 7'1" medium heavy rod. You know, nothing too stiff, but nothing too limber. You know, the rod pretty much loads up on his own. You just kind of lean into him a little bit, like you're setting the hook on a top water. Not as violent on a spinnerbait. It's more like the hook set on a chatterbait. You just kind of sweep your rod. You don't have to pop that hook home as much. And then just a 7-to-2-to-1 gear ratio reel, just, you know, right there in the middle. And anywhere you think there's going to be shad or bait fish in the area, you can toss this thing around on points, around boat docks, out in the open, over a flat. Just, it's a really good bait. You can cover water. It's a really good search bait, and it gets bites this time of the year in late fall and early winter. So next time you're out there, go try an underspin. I don't think you'll be disappointed in it. You may be surprised on how many fish you catch and the quality of fish you catch. And I just want to say thank y'all for watching this video. If you've made it this far, I know these videos are kind of boring. They're not exactly what I like to post, but I can't fish all the time. I wish I could fish 5 days a week and always have fishing content and, you know, videos of me fishing out on the lake, but unfortunately I can't do that. So I have to make, you know, tips and tricks and going over baits and just stuff like that. So y'all just bear with me. I'm going to try to get some fishing videos out here pretty soon. And I hope y'all are having a good year so far. Hope everything's been going good. And y'all be on the lookout for the next video that's coming out on Thursday. Thanks.